Good evening. My name is Jane Nuzzo, and I'm the Director of Alumni Affairs at School of Visual Arts. It's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to tonight's panel discussion, Let's Talk Women in the Creative Industries. SVA has graduated more than 35,000 artists, designers, writers, filmmakers, photographers, and other creative professionals. The Alumni Affairs and Development Office works to celebrate and support this vibrant group of creative minds. We are extremely proud of the hard work and exceptional achievements of our alumni and take great pride in continuing to support our graduates through educational and networking programs, career workshops and counseling, celebrating alumni achievements in the Visual Arts Journal, on social media, and in other online publications, providing alumni benefits, producing alumni exhibitions and art fairs, and hosting alumni panels, receptions, and special events in New York City, as well as connecting with alumni in cities across the country and around the world. To all of our alumni here this evening, both on the panel and joining us in the audience, as well as any future alumni, if we have any students out there tonight, we are honored that you chose SVA to learn and grow as creatives and as individuals, and it's wonderful to watch you all do so many incredible things. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here with us for tonight's event. You can find out more about us online at sva.edu/alumni, and on social media, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at SVA Alumni. This evening's event is inspired by the national conversation surrounding the treatment of women at work and the louder advocacy for an equitable society. Joining us are 4 alumni who will discuss the nuances of being women in art, design, and tech, and the current state of gender equality in their fields. Following tonight's program, SVA alumni and students in our audience are invited to join us in the lobby for a networking reception, so you'll have the opportunity to also speak with the panelists afterward. And now, before we begin, allow me to introduce our panel. Annaliisa Ariosa-Benston earned her MFA in 2016 in Fine Arts. Ariosa-Benston is a fine artist, curator, and director whose interactive installations incorporate two-dimensional artworks, wearable art objects, and often live tattooing, and have a strong focus on feminism, inclusiveness, and social codification. Her ongoing project and installation, Famous on Mars, lives primarily online through social media. Her work has been seen at Satellite Art Fair in Miami during Art Basel, and in galleries such as The Hole, Kunsthal Galapagos, Head Too Heavy, Gateway Projects, and the New Women's Space. Publications include Posture Magazine, the Visual Arts Journal, Art Fuse, Lady Gun Magazine, Social Decay, Miami News, ArtNet, Hyperallergic, and Bushwick Daily. Writer, artist, and filmmaker Nadia DeLane earned her MFA in 2015 in visual narrative. DeLane is a new media visual storyteller working in print, illustration, animation, and graphic design. Her current project, Coif City, is an illustrated hair zine dedicated to women's hair narratives. Recently, DeLane was a 2017 artist in residence at the Arte Studio Ginstrelle in Assisi, Italy, where she created a series of poems and illustrations on marginalized motherhoods, which will be published as a limited edition artist's book later this year. DeLane is a proud digital media mentor with the New York City-based organization Girls Write Now. Author, illustrator Aura Lewis earned her MFA in 2017 in illustration as visual essay. Lewis illustrates for different platforms, including online and print publications and books and branding projects. She has 2 books coming out, which she wrote and illustrated. Gloria's Voice, a picture book about Gloria Steinem, coming out this March, and The Illustrated Feminist, an illustrated feminist history handbook for adults to be published with Abrams in 2020. Jess Perilla earned her BFA in 2004 in graphic design. Perilla is an award-winning entrepreneur and designer who has worked in web design for the past 17 years. She founded JPD Studio, an NYC-certified minority and woman-owned business and woman-run full-service branding and web development and design firm. JPD creates impactful brands, websites, and designs that provide the necessary solutions for the most challenging business and brand needs. Some clients include publishing house Simon & Schuster, nonprofit organizations such as She's the First and the New York Council for the Humanities, and one of the top feminists and activists, Madam Gandhi. And finally, moderating this evening's conversation is Kate Styer. Styer is the Alumni Affairs Manager at SVA and is currently enrolled in SVA's Master Program in Interaction Design. Please join me in welcoming tonight's panel. And Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Jane, and thank you all of you for being here tonight. I'd like to start our discussion by going back. Each of you has successfully forged a meaningful career in a creative industry, but this didn't happen overnight. Jessica, you worked for 7 years before starting your own design studio. Ara, you were a designer before finding illustration. Nadia, you were pursuing a PhD before pivoting to art and design. And Annaliisa, you started out in banking, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Before shifting your focus to art. So Jess, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey getting to where you are today?
Sure, sure. So I actually started, before I went to SVA, I went to a school called College of Westchester, and I learned how to code there. And I also learned a lot of technical things like video editing, 3D. And I took those skills, and then I came to the School of Visual Arts, and I learned graphic design. And at some point, I realized that I could merge those two things. And at the same time that I was going to the School of Visual Arts, I also had an internship at this nonprofit. And at the nonprofit, I was really able to use like the skills that I learned here and the technical, like the coding skills. And that was like back in the year 2000 that I was like learning like all this stuff. And I was at the nonprofit for 7 years, and I learned a lot there. Like I learned a lot about coding and development. There were other developers there that I learned from. And while I was there, I started to do work for other people. Like people started to realize back then they needed websites. So I would go to a show, I would meet a musician, and I would say, hey, like, can I do your website? Or I would meet an artist or a chef, and I started to create websites while I was working full-time at a nonprofit. And I slowly started to create a portfolio. And after 7 years of, after 7 years of working full-time and building this portfolio, I realized that I wanted to do this full-time, and I wanted to start my own thing. And I quit my job, and that was like December 2016, and 2006. And then in January 2007, I started my company, and I actually rented out space from one of my clients. He had a loft on 5th Avenue and 26th Street, so I started small. One of the first things I bought was this whiteboard, and I put it up in the office, which had like no furniture, and I wrote at the top of it that everybody in the world wants to work with me, and that was my mantra every day coming into work, and then the rest just, was history.
Cool, thank you. Ara?
Yeah, so I actually started off on a path to become a psychologist, and I realized quickly that I need to do something in the creative field. And so I quickly sort of thought, what can I do that's practical? And I went to study graphic design, and I worked in that for I think about 6 years, and I still do a lot of design, and it's a great tool and skill, and I'm really glad that I did it. But I was feeling for a long time that I wasn't really creatively fulfilled. I really wanted to do things with my hands, and I just really wanted to be drawing and creating content rather than designing other people's content, which was a lot of what I was doing. And then I had this amazing opportunity to live in Argentina for 2 years. We moved there with my family, and I was able to quit my job, and I was able to devote a lot of time to just sort of figure out what I want to do. I did a lot of painting and soul searching, and I found my way back to illustration, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Great. Nadia?
Okay, so this is a winding road that leads to visual storytelling. So my background is primarily in literature. That's what my focus was. I wanted to get a PhD. I thought I wanted to be a literary critic. for as long as I could remember. But once I got to Penn State, I saw so many artists who were hiding their work. So there was this guy, for example, with huge squirrel paintings. I mean, they were like ceiling tall squirrel paintings that he's been working on for like 30 years. What are you going to do with these paintings? He's like, no, these are my private things. I'm like no, yeah. Show people this work. So I got into really connecting with local artists and the State College community. And I had so many other friends from the poetry workshop I was helping to coordinate. And this idea that people's stories and narratives were important is something that really stuck with me while I was pursuing literary criticism. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, I don't want to criticize literature. I want to write things, and I want to make things. So I became really obsessed with this idea of like, I don't want to focus on what's missing in the scholarship or what's missing. I want to focus on what I can contribute. And so I was doing like art shows, and the English department was telling me, oh, you need to work with the art department. And the art department was telling me, no, you're in the right department, you're in the English department. So I just made a decision to just leave with my master's degree. And once I did that, I returned back home to New Jersey, sort of like everyone wondering, what are you doing back here? And so I started working at the mall because I needed a job and I was a tutor. And that led me to work in fashion for a few years. So in fashion, I learned that you have to be creative on the drop of a hat, drop of a dime, and that was a great lesson for me. But I still was really concerned with how can I put content out there, and still talk to people and help people. So I was looking around for grad programs because I thought I need more education, definitely. And then surfing around on the web, I found this really strange program called Visual Narrative. And it was perfect for me, and it was the first year, and I thought this is going to be really experimental, so I'm going to go for it, and that's what I did. And since then, I was able to really combine these ideas of the visual and the storytelling and create those stories that can connect people, or that's my goal every time I go to put a pen to paper or put a graphic together. That's my goal.
Annaliisa?
Cool. So banking. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know how to use this mic. Basically, banking started off for me because I felt like I wanted to work in an industry that seemingly had an opportunity for creativity, including nonprofit work, and microlending was actually my entree into it. I was really excited about working with developing nations and people of many different cultures. And what I soon learned was that undergrad was never going to give me the opportunity to do those things that happened way after your MBA and years of working with very specific institutions. And if you were lucky, you met the right people who were going to then give you an opportunity to actually help people. And this whole time, I'm at Emory, and I'm thinking, I'm painting, I'm doing all these other creative things, and I kept keeping business and art separate because I didn't feel as though they were allowed to live in the same space, because God forbid you ever taint art with money, despite wanting to make money off of art so that it's your career. So over time, I made these rules and systems for myself where, okay, I'm gonna do a show, I'm gonna try to show my work, and I had some friends who had some really cool and creative spaces in Atlanta. And after Wachovia and Wells Fargo merged, the bank that I was working at actually closed, and I was in New York, and I thought to myself, fuck it. If I can find a job, I can find an apartment, I'm gonna have all my stuff sent up and I'm gonna apply to art school. So I got into Pratt for painting, and I went there. And while I was there, I started curating because I realized I had so many incredibly talented people around me who just, were waiting for someone to maybe say, hey, your stuff is great, let's put it on a wall somewhere. And having that, I guess, being a little bit older, coming to school again, I had this sort of feeling like, why not me? Why not just do it? And I started curating right away. And that sort of developed into more opportunities and more chances to produce work, not only thinking about a curator as a creative, not just an organizer, but actually having a voice within the curation aspect that people forget. You're not someone who's just telling people where to show up and drop off their work. You're actually thinking about something very conceptually and learning how to flex my brain in those different ways. which then led me to come to SVA, where I realized that my MFA could mean even more than even an MBA, where I could literally do anything with it. And I had never seen this kind of world open up for me. But I guess you were saying the rest is history, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, so as Jane mentioned in her introduction, one of the, if not the only reason or biggest reason we're here tonight is the current political climate, which is, it's an interesting moment to say the least. With the growth of the Me Too movement and the women's marches, women's voices are stronger and louder than ever before. So I'm wondering, for each of you as a woman, how do you view yourself and your work in this moment? Whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first.
Okay, thank you.
I view myself as my work. I feel like I'm in the world being a person that wants to connect with other people, and my work is about women primarily. It's about girls' stories, women's stories. Particularly with this Coif City project, I've been so surprised about who I get to be by trying to connect with my interviewees, you know, asking them this simple question of how does your hairstyle relate to your lifestyle has just opened up so much. And, you know, right now what we need is more stories, because vulnerability is the only way that we're gonna get related to one another. So I feel like if I can offer that, if I can be a vehicle for people to be able to contribute something to me that I can then share with others, sort of in a way that gives them anonymity and a feeling like I can share this story without totally exposing myself. I mean, my drawings are faceless, so that's helpful. But then also, yeah, that's who I'm being right now. I'm being a listener. I'm being a listener, and I'm trying to be a vehicle for people to communicate something that maybe under normal circumstances they wouldn't. And it's been so healing for me as a woman and as an artist to just hear these stories, because it's like loneliness out the window. Everyone's been through everything, you know? So if you have an experience that you think, it's just me, it's like, no, there's so many women who've been through that. So many people have been through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely a sense of urgency. Like, if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen. While that might not be true, I think that's a big part of my process as well. Like, I like to have a lot of materials around myself, because if I think of something and I don't have the chance to make it, I'm afraid I'm never going to. And I think that is a big reflection of the environment that I grew up in making art, and this feeling like I have to say what I'm trying to say because it may never be as clear as it is in my mind right now.
Yeah. I think as a woman in tech, it's really important for me to come to panels like this. And, you know, there's still not many women filling these roles. You know, I hear stories about dev teams. There's like one woman on the dev team. Myself, I think with my actions, things I have control over, for example, we try to hire women developers. We look for women developers. Also, my team is like an all-women team. And we also aim to work with organizations that are empowering women and girls locally, globally, and really like use what we know and like technology to help, you know, elevate their goals.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, it's a moment where women are being more vocal and really speaking up about wide range of the experience of being a woman, and about gender equality, and about sometimes really tough issues. And I see my work as part of that broad conversation about what it means to be a woman, about the feminine experience, and doing that unapologetically. Really there's all kinds of experiences, and it's exciting, and sort of celebrating being a woman in the art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I could say one, I don't think about my work as just being made by a woman. I think about a lot about intersectionality. I think a lot about what that means to women of color, and I also try to think about like what it is that I'm making right now is mostly gender neutral for that reason. I want people to feel there's a certain accessibility to what I'm doing. And I think for a lot of that is it's hoping to hear conversations and meet people unlike myself who can share their stories to me so that I can think about, you know, being a woman isn't just having a vagina, or being a woman isn't just femme presenting. These are all things that I'm learning constantly about, and it's about, you know, giving people the floor, listening to them and saying, hey, like your experience and what you're saying is meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I really like what you were saying, Laura, about being unapologetic and just really getting out there and being who you are, even if you are a woman or presenting as something else. Yeah. Annaliisa, I'm going to shift a little bit to a story that you told me when we spoke last week about when you considered having your brother show your work as if he was the artist.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could tell us that story and, you know, why it occurred to you to do that.
Well, I was a junior at Pratt, and I was painting, and I was noticing that there was so few courses for me to learn about female and female identifying artists, and I was feeling that the weight of that. And I thought of this project where I figured, what if I started presenting all of my shows as under my brother and having him present himself in the space, seeing how people reacted to a male presence. I mean, I was an abstract artist at the time, and a lot of my work was larger and considered rather masculine and in that traditional term. And I thought maybe, you know, some of the reactions that I would get from people would be like, oh, you know, like, what do you think about when you make your work as a woman making work that is like seemingly angry, or like asking me questions I knew people wouldn't ask me if I was a man. And I wondered what would happen if my brother were to perhaps be me for a year and just sort of show up in these spaces. I made the work. Maybe I didn't even teach him about talking about the work. He just was there, and he just could bullshit and see people reacted differently to that. Unfortunately, we weren't living in the same state at the time. Otherwise, it would have been a really interesting experiment. But it was something that I just felt, I mean, what if, you know? There's times when I was growing up where I was like, wow, if I was a guy, this would have been so much easier, you know? Mm-hmm. And that followed me into adulthood.
Yeah. And have you had any experiences where you feel like you have been evaluated differently because of that? Because you're a woman compared to maybe if you were a man like your brother? Yeah,
I mean, I've had people who want to talk to me about, you know, my personal life and where I live and like, things that just didn't have anything to do with my work. I feel like the questions are always leaning towards something that has to do with my physicality and personal life, things that, while my work at the time wasn't necessarily about that, and I would sort of roll with the punches, I definitely felt like I was being evaluated in a very different way. Different system, a different set of rules that I wasn't privy to, but was on the spot having to just put up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Jessica. You mentioned when we talked last week about the perception that women can be catty or competitive with each other. So I was wondering if you could talk about your experiences working with other women and what you think women do particularly well as collaborators.
So I think we're all familiar with like this narrative that women can be catty, or like groups of women, et cetera. So in my experience, having worked with like a team of women, some of the qualities that I've experienced have been the opposite. So the women that I work with, you know, we are very supportive of each other. There's like a lot of, it's like very, there's like intuition, like, you know, when we communicate, there's like transparency, there's empathy, there's just a natural sense of support. And with our projects, it really helps when you have that as a base, when we're all focused on like that goal, it helps when we're all like supporting each other. Like if, you know, one person's like falling behind, somebody picks up the slack, or no one tries to be the hero, or like there are no egos. Like it's just very seamless, and I think having like a strong base of communication and empathy, and just those are the qualities that I've experienced, like transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other experiences with collaborating with other women, and how that experience went well for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of positive experiences working with other women. I've had some experiences that honestly weren't so great, but I've had some other ones that were awesome. And I think when they went well, it was because there was just a lot of authenticity. And, you know, lately it's gone well more often. And actually one of my collaborators is in the audience right now. Hi, Jenny, how you doing? We worked on a t-shirt together in the visual narrative program. That was really a great experience, and we continue to support one another. I just sent her a painting yesterday at 5 a.m. I was like, is the hand too small? And she said, no, it's fine. So, you know, that's the type of, you know, relationship that I like to have, a working relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that most of the women that I've worked with have always, there's a certain accountability we have with each other that feels natural and doesn't feel forced. I don't feel like I have to babysit anybody. I feel weird saying that, like, okay, does anyone know what I mean? I just feel that, right, there's honesty. I don't feel like if I'm going to say something, I'm necessarily going to hurt anyone's feelings. There's no egos that are situated. There's no grandstanding or white knighting that happens. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like what didn't get done, we need to fix it. Someone's there, someone does it. Mm-hmm. Just no nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a really great tweet recently that was something like, we always try to kind of correct women out of saying things like, I think or I feel, but like we should stop trying to fix women.
Gotta stop apologizing.
Yeah, like stop apologizing. Yeah. But like maybe we're doing that right. That's why women are successful at collaborating, because they are more, you know, they're not always so staunch and stuck in their opinions. They're open to other things, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Let's see. Aura, you told me a little bit before about balancing your career as being a mother at the same time. And I think a lot of women feel like society puts a lot of pressure on us to do everything, to lean in, to chase after this sort of elusive work-life balance, you know, whether that's being a mother or a partner or a friend or trying to be all of those things at once. So I wanted to hear from you about how you've navigated that and what you've learned from it.
Okay, so it's a constant navigation. I'm still, you know, figuring it out. But one thing about being a parent is that your work time becomes really, really precious, and your priorities sort of, you know, go into focus, because you don't have a lot of time. You know, you have a lot of time. You have to take care of the kids. You have to do a lot of things. So the work time becomes really precious, and I think that actually helped me figure out what I really want to be doing with my time. You know, if I wasn't feeling fulfilled, that sort of really helped me. Okay, this is the time I have. What am I going to do to make it meaningful and really create work that I want to create? And I try to really sort of separate the two things. It's hard because I work from home, and so obviously the parenting and my art inform each other, and I'm inspired by my daughters, and but I do really try to keep them separate to sort of stay sane and create work that, you know, I'm focused on my work, or I'm focused on my daughters, and, you know, I'm present with them. So, and it's a constant dance. You know, I don't think it's a perfect balance ever. Sometimes you have to spend more time on one thing and the other, and there are sacrifices. You know, something has to give if it's your social life or,
yeah,
for example.
Yeah. Does anybody else have other stories about sort of balancing maybe relationships or any other part of your life with your work and how you've done that?
I have 3 cats, and they're never cool
They
about
need
it.
your support.
Never cool. Yeah. No, I think that if you're with people, you're in a relationship, you're an artist, you're with creatives, people understand your career is important to you, and they know that, I mean, it's being grown up, you gotta talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, are you moving on to the next question?
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like constant strategizing, like constantly strategizing around, like, where do I put my hours, and how much time do I spend here or there, and self-care and all those other things that we need to just keep the creative machine running. You know, it's important to have understanding people around you, like you mentioned, just working with other creatives and, you know, having a partner that writes and uses that aspect of himself as well is just important. So, yeah. But it's balance, it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Does anybody have any self-care tips? I know it's not unique to being a woman, but it is, especially as a creative person, it's always I think a constant struggle to figure out how to take care of yourself, but also to let your ideas flow and let your work, you know, evolve and get things done and all that.
I mean, I try to meditate whenever possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing when you can actually like keep it going for a while.
Yeah.
I feel like during the day, like I'll try to get out and like do lunch, like out, like go to the park or something, just not be in the office all the time. And that I consider that to be like self-care, just like not being at my desk for like 8 or 9 hours straight, and you know.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so hard when you do what you love to like remember that it's work and like you're not thinking about yourself or the things that like make you a full person, not just the art or not just the producing, but the friends and the drinking. And y'all do it, come on. And I don't. It's hard. It's hard because if you're really, really lucky to do things that you care about and work with people that you love, it never feels like you're denying yourself something. Mm-hmm. So remembering that you are, you know, forgetting about your partner or forgetting about your 3 cats.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something really crazy.
Do it.
I think crying has been really important for me because I spent so many years feeling like to be taken seriously in business, to be taken seriously in any creative industry, because there's so few of us, I have to hold back that emotional
Yeah,
side.
we're not supposed to cry.
I'm not supposed to cry.
Yeah.
Even like if I'm by myself, I'm like, no, I gotta be by myself. Can't cry. But that really has been helpful for me, just in my maturity, to be like, okay, it's okay to have that moment. You know, maybe I can get something out of it too, creatively.
Yeah.
So, you know, not that I try to make myself cry. It happens.
No one wants to be that girl on the train.
Yeah.
I'm going to add sleep, which I don't know, maybe sounds, you know, trivial, but, you know, I used to pull like all-nighters to get my work done, and I still have to do that occasionally, but I try so hard to put it as a priority to stay sane and, you know, do everything I want to do. So, yeah.
I want to kind of add to crying. I don't know if this is in the realm of that, but I started journaling recently, and like that really helps get like, I feel like sometimes at the end of the day I feel like I have like monkey brain, and like it's just, there's like just so many thoughts going through my head about everything, work, life, and it's really been helping. I mean, I've only been doing it for like 2 weeks, but it's it's good so far.
So is the technical term for that crying out of your hands?
Yeah.
Nice.
Nadia, I'm going to shift to you for a second. You told me a story when we spoke about a time when you were young, and it speaks to kind of what you were saying before about hearing stories from women that you're like, oh, I'm not alone at all. I've been through that too. So you told me a story about realizing that the world saw you a little bit differently because you were a woman. So.
Oh, that story. Yeah. Well, I guess now I have to tell everybody. Thank you, Kate.
I'm sorry. If you'd like to tell a different one, that's okay.
No, I told a story about, you know, being 12 years old and being at a pool party. And, you know, I have Afro hair. I was 12. I didn't shave my armpits. Oh, my goodness. So I go and I'm wearing a one piece and I go inside the pool and I come out and I'm like, okay, this is an awesome pool moment for me, you know? This is so fun. But then I look around and I see that like people are like pointing at my underarms. And I'm like, oh my goodness. That was the first moment where I realized that I'm being perceived a certain way because of like underarm hair. And I'm being looked at a certain way in a bathing suit. It was just like I didn't have an awareness of my body or my physical self or being perceived as a woman before that moment. And I was like, I just became this observer of myself. Like, they're making this big of a deal because of underarm hair and a bathing suit, and my hair was in an afro, and it came out of the pool in an afro. It was like, wow, this is crazy. So that for me was like a genesis moment, and I'm so thankful for it because it sort of like informed my whole creative process. It's just like I became an observer of every experience, and I looked for ways to get curious about life. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you. No, like I said before, I mean, I think we all have stories like that from our lives of sort of realizing like, oh, there's something a little bit different about me. And I think it's great to share them. Yeah. So do you guys have anything that comes to mind?
I think the first time I noticed it was a group of boys who started talking, and they didn't really notice I was there, and I was probably like 9 or 10, and they're like, oh, no, you can't say that in front of her, she's a girl. You can't say that. It's not okay. As if to like say that in front of me were to like taint my purity or something. Like, but at the time I didn't think that way. I just thought, why can't I know what you're talking about? I thought it was this great secret club where everyone talked about really cool stuff and I wasn't allowed to hear it. And it just was that beginning of feeling left out, where like my community was mostly boys. It just happened to be the neighborhood I lived in. And suddenly I wasn't allowed to do certain things because being with boys was like not okay. Somehow it was inappropriate, right? But through no fault of your own other than how you were born.
Yeah. That like reminds me, like I think, yeah, growing up I was like a tomboy, and I would definitely hang out with all the boys, and I think things changed at some point, like then there were like crushes, or then you realized, oh, okay, we're not like on the same, whatever. And also like I think my mom, she was like, okay, no more playing with boys.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let the audience know that in a few minutes we're gonna turn it over to you guys. So if you want to start thinking of some questions you want to ask these women, please do that. And so just a couple more questions to wrap up. What is one bit of advice that you would give to yourself maybe 10 years ago, knowing what you know now about where you are in your life? Whoever would like to start.
Take up more space. Yeah.
Do you want to?
Don't ask for permission. Just do it. We're so polite. We just keep expecting people to say, if you ask, then they'll like respect you more, or they'll think, oh, you're just good manners. Just do it. Just do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I started my company, I didn't really know like how long it was gonna like go for, right? And so this year we celebrated 11 years, and looking back, I guess I probably should have set some like 5 to 10 year like goals, and I didn't. I love the journey, and I feel like we've been very successful, and I'm proud of what we've achieved. But I feel like there would have been a different type of like satisfaction in having like maybe met like those goals, even if like you don't think you're going to like get there, like 5, 10, 20. Like what are your goals? Like I guess dreaming bigger. I would go back and tell myself that.
That's great. Nadia?
I would tell myself to stop searching for mentors. I mean, it's great to search for coaches, people who can help you in certain aspects of life, I think. but I was constantly on this search for like the perfect mentor that was going to model a path for me. And the truth is that there are a lot of great people that we can learn from, but no one's going to be able to map everything out for anyone. So I think I would have just started being crazier earlier instead of waiting for someone to say, it's okay for you to do what you want to do now. It's good. You can go ahead. You can move forward. Yeah, that's what I do differently.
Yeah, similarly, I would tell myself to trust my intuition, trust myself, and take other people's opinions and advice really with, more discernment, more grain of salt, and follow my.
Cool. Okay, and if each of you want to go through and tell us about one project or new thing that you have coming up that you're working on now.
Sure. So we're really excited to be working with the National Comedy Center. They are a new museum that's opening up in the U.S., solely dedicated to comedy. It's in Jamestown, and we're currently working with them on the website. It's going to be a really awesome museum. It's like interactive. They're going to have like holograms like of comedians like George Carlin. And we took a tour. We had to wear hard hats because they were like constructing it. It was really cool. So we're building their website, and it'll be launching by end of next month. It's thecomedycenter.org.
Awesome.
I'm working on my next book, which it's already under contract, but I have a lot of work to do for it, The Illustrated Feminist. It's an American feminist history handbook, so that's exciting.
For adults, right?
For adults,
Which sounds fun. Yeah.
I know you said one project, but there's two.
I was literally going to ask, can I do two, please?
Yes, please, tell us all.
So I'm trying to finish out a documentary on the immigrant experience in the United States, focused on Blacks and Latin Americans. So that's what I'm working on. And then another project is tentatively called Line 33, and that's the book on marginalized motherhoods.
Very cool. So I have a new position with Satellite Art Show, and I'm doing sponsorship and partnership liaison. That doesn't actually just stay within that realm. I'm also looking for artists and people doing proposals, especially pushing for tech and interactive installations and things like that. So always open on that project, and that's for Miami during Art Basel. We're also working on producing the new show that's going to happen 2019 in New York, so we're bringing Satellite to New York as well. The second project I'm working on, I just actually got back from my show in LA, and I have another show in June at Zhou Gallery. If any of you will be in LA, go check it out. And that's a solo for Famous on Mars. Thanks.
Great. All right, so I'd like to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm starting to notice that there's a perception, because I work on a team. I work in production in art and in design, and I work with mostly men. And I notice like a new guy could come in and have this perception that he's fantastic, everyone respects him, but might not be, like his skills might be much lower than mine. And then as being the woman on the team, there's this perception that I'm always learning, that my boss is always teaching me something. And I noticed when this new guy came that he would leave every day, 5:30. And I used to be so eager to help everybody on my team that I would go around to everyone's desk and say, I'm about to leave, do you need anything? Oh, no. And once I stopped doing that, because he wasn't doing it, I started to realize I was being respected more. So it was like, the nicer you are, the less respect you get. So I was trying to figure out, what is this perception that somebody who can create that might not be that great? Because if the people who really are great can have that, figure out that perception, then we would be fantastic.
Oh, that's so hard.
There's a lot in there.
I feel like it reminds me of like that question of like how many people are really thankful to their mothers. You know, we take them for granted because they're always there. They're always really helpful. They're really loving, and there's lots of things that we learn. That we learn from them, and there's this. I think it just carries into adulthood, where if anyone sort of mimics that because they're caring, thoughtful, they want the office to work well, you're acting like almost like a manager for the office. People tend to expect it and no longer appreciate it. So when you miss it, you're like, oh, well, I guess maybe like that's not really her job, you know.
I also feel like there's a certain, maybe it's society that puts this pressure on women to feel like they have to nurture everyone in the office space. Like, make sure everyone's having a good day. You know, if someone's looking down, make sure, how can we uplift this person? And it's just not our responsibility to cater to someone else's happiness. It's their responsibility. But we're socialized in a way where no matter how talented we are, we're in this space to take care of everyone. It's just like, no. No.
That reminds me of an article I read about how female developers and male developers, like how they come at, like, I guess, like how they talk about like their skills, and like a male developer might like learn some code, and then he'll think he's like, you know, just like an excellent coder, and will apply to all those jobs that require like skills that are beyond his. But then you'll have like a female coder that is like doesn't feel like she knows enough, or doesn't know enough like programming languages, or isn't good enough. That happened with somebody I know, that she was like an excellent coder, and she wouldn't call herself a developer or programmer. She didn't feel like she was good enough, and like we had to tell her like as a team, like, yes, you are a developer. I just had to share that.
Yeah, so I know that Nadia kind of touched upon this when she discussed that story about when she was 12 years old and had afro hair, but I was just wondering if anyone else, or if Nadia has another story about, like, if you have any, like, other, like, stories of, like, your experience of being a woman and, like, some other marginalized identity, like, I don't know, just maybe how your experience is different from, like, white, cisgender, heterosexual, neurotypical, able-bodied, Christian, et cetera, woman, like, yeah.
Oh, how much time do we have? No, I mean, I have stories for days about being a Black woman, working in creative industries. It's like, that always learning thing. It's funny, it wasn't until I realized that, okay, I'm not going to draw like everybody else in here. The bodies that I create aren't going to look like the bodies that everyone else is creating. The ones that are on their minds aren't on my mind. I'm trying to create bodies that look like me. I'm trying to draw hair that looks like my hair, you know, or whatever I'm making it. So that's going to create a different product than someone else making it. And I have lots of stories about how I've, you know, been spoken to differently, treated differently, the language used around critiquing my work different. But at the end of the day, that's why I made that comment about not searching for the perfect mentor, because I've had coaches, I can take critique, and I can, you know, anyone can grow in their field, but you can't look for someone to tell you it's okay now's your time. Now it's okay, Black girl, for you to make your Black women stuff. Now it's okay, girl, for you to make your vagina work now. It's like, don't wait.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. I got a lot of stories.
When you asked that question, I'm sorry, were you talking about specifically our experiences learning about our bodies?
No, I was just asking, like, any, like, experiences where, like, being a woman intersects with some other marginalized identity you might have, like, whether that be being queer or a woman of color or disabled, or et cetera.
There's a lot of that as well. I mean, being multicultural is a huge part of that, between just experiencing lunchroom dynamics. As somebody who comes from many cultures, the food I'd bring to school was not something that people were used to seeing, and there was a lot of like, what is that? You know, what's that smell? Or like whatever, someone, you know, I'm half Taiwanese, and just like having people say things because they didn't know that by looking at me right away, because I'm not like that visibly Asian. My brother takes more of the Asian side than I do, and people would say really like weird and racist things about Asian women in front of me, or, you know, whatever things people like, actually because of that passing. It's a little bit of the opposite of what you're saying. I was like privy to hear something that people thought would be just like okay, because they can't pinpoint where I'm from or who I am just by looking at me immediately, which is what we take advantage of a lot. We assume and curate our conversations to the audience that's currently in front of us, and we don't even realize that this there's a mirroring language or code switching. You code switch when you're like, I speak differently when I'm around only Asian people, or like my family, versus like on this panel or with just my friends. And that's something that I think we don't even know we're even doing.
I had a question about when all of you talked about trying to find what you're doing now, or like the end goal that is now. How was your experience finally understanding what you wanted, or like what you wanted to create, or while like you were on your way to whatever you're doing now, did you have like a awakening moment that you were like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, for me, originally when I was growing up, I wanted to be an illustrator for Disney, like an animator. Like I always loved art. I loved drawing. So I knew I wanted to do something artistic. So when I went to school and I discovered coding, I was like, my mind was blown because of all, what I could do with it. My first website was actually like a website of just like GIFs or GIFs, however you say it. It was just like pages and pages. This is like, the year 2000. And that was like so amazing. And I think like once I like merged the coding with design, like I just knew. So I knew early on that I wanted to just continue this path and wherever it would take me.
I'll
go ahead.
Okay. I always knew I was going to do something creative. I was always taking things that weren't meant to be creative and then trying to make them creative, like banking and things like that. I was like, oh, how can I just like switch this over towards something more loose and open? And I did Chinese brush painting as a kid for several years, and I think for a very long time I just decided, like I said earlier, I would put things, I'd compartmentalize them. I'd say, okay, this is the artsy stuff, this is the business side, this is how I'm going to survive, this is how I'm going to like feel fulfilled. And at a certain point when I was actually at SVA, I had a professor who was just like, why aren't these things together? I was wearing some of my famous MR stuff, which I kept completely separate from like my other installation-based painting things. And after a while of thinking about that, like I was sitting in my studio and she's looking at these like really large scale, really intense paintings I'm doing directly onto the wall, and she's like, I'd rather look at you than look at your work. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, fuck you. Like I was so mad because I put so much into it, but she was saying I would prefer looking at the things that you were making outside of this. And if that's more interesting, then that's a problem. And that sort of started to click with me, and I started thinking, what can I do to meld these two worlds together and start giving myself the permission to be fully amorphous rather than saying that one thing can or cannot be art. And I think that was, for me, that aha moment was huge for me, because then I started putting it together and really pushing and giving myself the permission to be political in my work, giving myself the permission to say I'm a female artist, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like I was always a little embarrassed by it. And I know that wasn't something I chose to feel. It was something that I learned by somebody else. Because I could never figure out why. It didn't make any sense. But yeah, that's basically it.
I had a moment when I realized that I was sort of onto something, and I think that was back when I was at Penn State and I was doing those art shows for the local artists. I was like, okay, I really want to do something where people can have a voice, tell their stories. I want to be a part of that. And I like what you said about the curator not just standing back telling people where to bring their work.
Yeah.
That sort of was a moment for me, triggered in my mind what type of creator I wanted to be, and I knew it involved people and community. So that was like a moment where I was like, okay, I don't know exactly, but I'm on the right track.
So when I was a kid, I used to make a lot of books and draw and create characters, and I always thought like, oh, I'll make books when I'm bigger, but I sort of forgot about that and lost confidence and thought I can't really do that later. I can't really, I don't know, I'm not good enough. And so I did all these other things, and I was a designer, and then in Argentina when I was really, I think it was like we had 6 months left, and we had to start thinking, you know, what am I going to do when I get back? And the thought of going and finding a job as a graphic designer in an office, no offense. I was miserable, and so I always procrastinated with drawing and doodling and illustrating. So it was always something that I was doing, but on the side. And then I guess it was like part fear of like not wanting to do something else, and just part getting braver and saying, you know, I'm gonna do this. I have to do this. And I remember having this moment, like I feel like my voice, something was telling me like, don't be afraid. And I really remember that. And so I went for it.
So I feel in regards to your comment about figuring out your sort of creativity, if that's kind of how I understood it maybe, that it's always shifting, I feel, like what your goals are always changing and evolving. So I just wanted to, put that in there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have a question for Jessica. Do you feel economically less than your male business owners? Do you feel that, have you compared your salary to other web developers? I'm just curious, because I've discovered through a mutual client that a male collaborator was making like $300 more an hour than I was.
Wow.
And I was so upset. I was so upset by it, because I think that it was just the way I'm billing is I'm giving myself less worth than I should. But have you had any economic comparison experience?
So I guess, what we did once, in the beginning I was a freelancer and I was doing development on my own, but once we became a firm, what I started to do is I did compare like what our price was like compared to other like firms our size. So like we did price ourselves like competitively as a firm, which would be different than like a developer's rate. So I can't say that I've compared my a developer rate, but we did do like that research in terms of like a firm of our size, of our like quality of work.
Hi. So I don't know everybody's work. I know Nadia's work. But it seems like you make work that expresses your point of view as a woman, like several of you maybe. And it's literally like, this is the work I'm making. It's the female experience. I'm a woman telling you this thing. I guess I would be curious to hear more about that from everybody. You know, I'm just a woman who makes art, and sometimes it's speaking about my experience as a woman explicitly. Other times it's only speaking about the female perspective simply because I'm a female artist. So I'm wondering if you guys consciously distinguish those two things. Do you think it's important that you express yourself as a woman artist, a female artist, as opposed to just an artist making something? And how does that play into your work?
Can I respond to this? I'm a woman, so my work is going to be about my experience, I feel like inherently. And I could pretend that that's not the case, but that's just like an inauthenticity that's unnecessary. So that's my opinion on it. I'm not always just thinking about, oh, I'm a woman making this. I'm kind of like not even connecting to, I'm a woman making this thing. It's like, I am a woman that's understood and I'm making something. So if someone perceives it as, I prefer womanist art, that's awesome. But I'm not consciously saying, everything that I make has to be about this experience of being in this body, because I'm also into like unseen experiences as well, or unseen ways of being as well, that I think are really important.
Yeah, I would say it's hard to separate the two, but a lot of it's intentionality, how you talk about your work, what you say your work is about versus how someone perceives your work. And if you take control over that dialogue, then you can sort of steer people in the direction you're hoping, or perhaps your work can stand on its own and it doesn't really even need that. But I would argue that a lot of my work is about just being human and being where I am now in the world and in the community that I live and the people that I experience, because not all my work is about necessarily my first person point of view. Sometimes it's very emotionally driven and it's a shared feeling. So I feel like sometimes there's a certain genderless sort of feeling about that, but that's partly because of the political sides that I'm trying to access. So yes, I'm a woman who makes artwork, but I would never say that everything I make is about being a woman.
It's a really good question and a hard one. For me, yeah, everything I make is from the female perspective, but that being said, I do consciously also create art that speaks about women, focuses on women's lives. I don't in any way try to represent, all female experience at all, but it is important for me to contribute to the that conversation of what that means. And my work, if you see it, I think it's just me, but it's very feminine, maybe even girly. And I'm aware of that. I know that's part of the women experience, but I'm also, like I said before, trying to be unapologetic about that. Like, that is just as, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just as okay to, to show that part of the, it's just as legitimate. I think I felt that art that's more masculine looking, design that's more masculine looking is more revered, and pink is looked down on, and girliness is considered not sophisticated. And I'm trying to, just sort of keep doing it and saying, this has something to say too. This is, part of being a woman. It's a perspective.
So I would say I don't really do personal work. Like, our work, what we do is more commercial. We're creating websites for clients and we want them to be happy. I feel like my experience was like the opposite. Like, we were an all-women team from the very beginning, and I didn't tell people that. Like, I was very much about, like, we're doing great work. I want the client to be excited about the work. It's not really about, like, our gender. And I thought like this for like a very long time, and people in meetings would say, "Oh, you're like an all-women team. That's amazing." Like, I didn't even know that there were like all-women tech teams in New York. This is like back in like 2009, and I think like I started to hear that more and more, and and then there was like more conversations popping up about like there are not a lot of women in technology, and like we're hearing that more and more, and it's like getting louder and louder, and then at some point, Julia, our head of business, she was like, "Why aren't you like talking about this more? Like, why isn't this like on your homepage? Like, why do people not know that you're like an all-women tech team?" And so we started to build that into our branding, and people like really responded to that. And for many reasons, like one of them being also that they wanted to work with like all women because maybe their product needed that perspective.
So I'm really bad at public speaking, so I wrote my question down. With the Me Too movement and the social media being a powerful voice, it lets all women know that we're not alone. If it comes to the day where the system is abused and women aren't seen as credible, how do we think we could continue voicing our opinions and our experiences?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, you're talking about when there's more people lying about it, and whether or not that discredits all voices, and what do we do in reaction to that?
Yes.
You just don't stop. You can't. Because once you stop, then you are silenced. And people are still people. People will lie. But you can't stop just because someone says, no, today the sky is green, or no, somebody, anything like that. It's a movement that can't, like, this urgency that we're all feeling, and the reason why it was such a large movement and the reason why people are still talking about it is because we won't stop. You can't take the conversation away. Because once you stop putting that conversation on the table, it becomes as though it's no longer important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like language is so powerful and owning your story is so powerful. So this concept of credibility and the truth versus the lie, I mean, who's determining that?
Yeah.
So really, if you have a story and it needs to be shared, then it's your responsibility to share that story, regardless of how women are being perceived. I mean, by whoever's eyes are looking at women and saying all women are liars. I mean, that's not credible.
I mean, that's a determination and a reflection of that person,
right?
Not women.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to speak with you. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kate.